Hello, welcome back to another video. If you don't already know, I am a women's health and wellness coach and have done my masters in women's health. In today's video, I'll be going over whether you actually need to cycle sync. To get into that, I'll break down what the menstrual cycle phase is actually like, what cycle syncing claims to do, as well as what you can be doing instead of cycle syncing, which we'll get into all of it and whether cycle syncing is actually doing what it says it does. It's not, but we'll get into that. So firstly, your menstrual cycle is split into two phases, your follicular phase and your luteal phase. In your follicular phase, you have two parts to it. You have your early follicular and your late follicular. In the early follicular, this is when you have your period. So day one of your cycle is day one of your period. And that starts the early follicular phase. In this, your hormones are low, estrogen is starting to rise. As we get into your late follicular, this is when estrogen really begins to rise, and this is essentially thickening the lining of your uterus that has just shed days prior with your period. So the early follicular phase lasts around 1 to 5 days, sometimes 7 days depending on your cycle, and in the late follicular phase is another week to 10 days after that. And then you have your ovulation. Ovulation is what splits up follicular and luteal. Then you have ovulation, which is about 3 days. And at this point, estrogen is at its highest. And once you ovulate, you're then going to see a dip in estrogen and an increase in progesterone. There are also other hormones at play, things like your LH and FSH. Your FSH reaches its peak around ovulation and then dips down. FSH essentially stimulates your follicle to grow and mature, while LH, which also surges around ovulation, is the hormone that releases that. Then when you go into your luteal phase, you have an increase in progesterone and a decrease in estrogen. The increase in progesterone can essentially cause tiredness. It's almost like grumpy hormone. It can make you a bit less social, and that is when things like cycle syncing become a way to manage your cycle, as you're essentially being told that when you come into your luteal phase, you need to slow down, and when you're in your late follicular phase, it's to be doing more because it's when you've got your most energy. So the changes in the hormones is essentially where cycle syncing has become a tool to manage your cycle, and it's based around doing things in line with how your hormones change throughout the phases. With that, what you tend to find, especially in the side of exercise, so there's different ways to cycle sync. You can do it with food, people do it with different seeds, which I'm going to get into. You don't need to be doing that. You can do it around like exercise and managing your activity around your cycle and doing different things each week. The issue with this is that you have no consistency, and it also rules out a very key thing that we need to be aware of when it comes to our menstrual health. And that is, if you are having extreme changes week on week based on your menstrual cycle, your cycle is not healthy, and you most likely have a condition or something going on that is causing those fluctuations to be so severe. And what we want to be doing instead is trying to have a lifestyle overall that is going to minimize the changes you're having week to week. So instead of cycle syncing, what you want to be doing is focusing on, I'm not even going to say balancing your hormones, but that is what someone would say at this point. They can say instead what you want to do is balance your hormones. No, because your hormones are constantly changing, and as they should be. What you want to be doing is, a lot of the time when our cycle is changing quite drastically, so when you come from your follicular phase, people find when they get into luteal phase, they either have a lot of cramping, a lot of fatigue, or they have negative thoughts. And these can be symptoms of things like PMDD, PCOS, endometriosis, PMOS, it has now changed. That can all be symptoms of it and can be a sign that you're dealing with a gynecological menstrual condition. So what people find is they go into their follicular and they're like, woo, we are happy. And they come to luteal and they're like, I feel like shit. Instead, what you want is to find a neutral approach to your cycle. You want to be able to do the same thing that you do during your period when you're also in the best part of your follicular phase, and when you're in your tireder phase of the luteal phase. You want to be able to do the same things throughout, and you shouldn't be able to see such big changes throughout. Like, you shouldn't be having high energy, low energy, painful periods. What you want to be doing is neutralizing it. And a big factor that can cause these changes is things like inflammation. So when you are quite inflamed, you will find that it can affect your brain fog, it can affect your fatigue, it can affect cramping, and inflammation increases when it comes up towards your period because of the changes in your hormones and how your body is preparing for your period. Your inflammation can increase, and that can cause fatigue, brain fog, cramping, as I've already said. So what you want to be doing instead is finding a way to minimize this inflammation as much as possible. So you want to be having exercise that is low intensity and low impact, that you can do when you're on your period, and that you can also do when you're in the best week of your follicular phase or ovulation, whatever. You want to be able to do it all the way through. And if you are finding on your period or at some points in your luteal phase that you're feeling more sluggish or you're in pain, instead of doing a different form of exercise, you instead just adjust it. So you either have a rest day and listen to your body if you need it, or you do lighter weights, or whatever the exercise is, you do a lower version of it. So you do lighter weights, or you do one less exercise on it, or a lower, if you're doing like Pilates, you'll do a lower version of the exercise, like a lower progression, and you can have longer rest. And that's better ways to adapt your exercise instead of changing what you're doing each week. So instead of going from HIIT training to strength training to Pilates to yoga, that's what cycle syncing wants you to do. And instead you just adjust your workouts so that you can do all cycle long to listen to your body. And doing low impact, low intensity will be the best way of doing that and be accessible all cycle long. And then when it comes to food and managing that around your cycle, yes, you can crave sugar as you come into your periods, your early follicular, as your luteal phase comes to an end. You can be wanting more sugar, and that is fine. It's actually our body's way of saying that it needs more energy. So things that you can do is to increase the carbohydrates in your meal and also eat the sugar. It's okay to have a bit of chocolate. You don't need to find ways to curb the cravings. You can just lean into it. You don't need to sit there and eat a whole share bar every evening, but you can lean into it. And then if you're focusing on having lower inflammatory foods day to day, you'll find you're less likely to be bloated as you come into your period. There's no set food group you can cut out for inflammation, but what you can do is you can find which foods are reactive for you, because gluten, dairy, yes, okay, they are known as being inflammatory foods, but they're not inflammatory for everyone. So instead what you want to be doing is doing a food diary symptom tracker, which you can get for free. I've got one myself that I've made, and you can have, just click the link in the bio. And doing that, you can track what foods you either get nauseous from, bloat to, or feel a lot of fatigue to. Sometimes people get IBS, there's different symptoms. You can track which foods you react to and slowly reduce them. Because cutting out whole food groups won't last in the long run anyway, but finding foods that you react to and reduce them over time will help you, and will also help you manage your cycle as well. And you'll find that your symptoms will vary a lot less throughout. So instead of going through your period and cycle syncing all the way through and doing different things each week to match your hormones, what you want to do is just find a happy medium that makes your periods and your whole menstrual cycle more manageable. So doing a form of exercise that you can do all cycle long, and find the foods that are inflammatory for you and slowly reduce them. You don't need to cut them out together, but slowly reduce them. Lean into your cravings. Don't let yourself feel guilty for that, because that will only add food noise around your periods, which we don't want. And you will find that you will have a more balanced way of going through your cycle without feeling that your body or your mind is completely changing each week. For more women's health advice that is guided by research and not trends, make sure you subscribe, and I'll be uploading new videos every Sunday.